الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد inshallah to continue with the book of Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah Ad-Da' wad-Dawa, the sickness and the cure. Last week we had gone over some of the evil effects of the sins and how they can destroy the heart, the body, in this world and the next world. We mentioned hirman al-ilm, being prevented from beneficial knowledge, is one of the signs of the sins upon a person, and it's a very dangerous sign to be prohibited or prevented from seeking the knowledge of the deen, of knowing what's halal and haram, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves or hates. So if somebody finds himself being prevented from knowledge, they should, take account of themselves and find out why. And also we mentioned the stories of some of the Salaf, how if they do a small sin, it would affect their memory. And we said, like Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, how he had a photographic memory. He could read a page once and memorize it, and if he fell into sin, that small sin that we said, he might have seen the calf of a woman and it affected his memory. Or just pondering upon the Salaf in general, how they had, mashallah, so much taqwa, their memory and their ilm and their capabilities of learning was so high. Like Imam az-Zuhri was said that he can hear something once and memorize it. So as he walked through the streets, he would be very careful to cover his ears sometimes, because he didn't want to hear stuff and had it stick in his mind, afraid to have evil effects and affect his knowledge of Islam. So we also talked about hirman al-rizq, that sinfulness can prevent somebody from attaining provisions. And al-wahsha, the loneliness or anxiety one feels in their heart between themselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the person falls into sins, often they start getting that type of anxiety or ill feeling in their hearts between them and between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also wahshat bayn an-nas, like having that type of anxiety or feeling between them and the people, especially the believers. They won't feel comfortable being around the believers, they won't feel comfortable being around others who are good, because the sin is taking over them. Also we talked about ta'sir umurihi, from the evil effects of the sins is making their affairs hard upon them. They'll find problems in their life that they didn't find before. Like we said, some of the Salaf said that they can see the ill effect of sin in their riding beast or even in their wife or their family when they come home. That's how in tune they were with themselves. Also, al-zulma, the darkness that one finds from committing sins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes places a darkness upon one's face and one's mannerisms because of the sins that he keeps or she keeps falling into. ومنها أن المعاصي توهن القلب والبدن, that the sinfulness weakens the heart and it actually physically weakens the body. And I think we stopped on the hirman al-ta'a, from the sinfulness, the evil effects of sins, is that one is being prevented from doing good deeds. The more one falls into sin, the harder it becomes for them to do good deeds, and this is a serious punishment. So if we see, like inshallah we're going to go into the other ones as well, but just to keep in mind, if you see some of these evil effects in yourself, one of them or some of them, or may Allah prevent all of them, that's a mercy from Allah in a sense, because He's giving you at least you're able to see it. When people get too deep into sin sometimes, like we'll learn maybe tonight or the next dars, they are unable to see these evil effects, so sin becomes normal for them. So this is a rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you like a warning, to basically check yourself, do a review of yourself, find out what am I doing wrong, what sin am I falling into, so you can inshallah take advantage of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy before it's too late. ومنها أن المعاصي تقصر العمر وتمحق بركته ولا بد فإن البر كما يزيد في العمر فالفجور يقصر العمر. And he says that from the evil effects of ma'asi, sinfulness, is that it decreases the lifespan of somebody and it erases their blessings. And this is a reality, just as righteousness will increase somebody's lifespan and increase their barakah or their blessings. وقد اختلف الناس في هذا الموضوع, and the people, they differed upon this statement. وقال طائفة نقصان العمر العاصي هو ذهاب بركة عمره ومحقها عليه وهذا حق وهو بعد تأثير المعاصي. So some that say that the evil effects of sinfulness is that it will take away the blessing of the life. So not the actual lifespan, but the blessing of the life. وقال طائفة بل تنقص حقيقة. Another group says no, it actually literally decreases the lifespan of a person. You know, just like the Prophet ﷺ said that if you do good deeds, it increases your lifespan and it increases your rizq, your barakah. Sinfulness can actually physically decrease your lifespan and physically decrease your provisions. And of course this is all in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Both were written. Like it was written that, you know, if you would do such and such thing, you would live to this point, but if you did such and such, then your life would be less. For example, if you fell into sins and more sins. Or if it was written that if you would live such and such if you did such and such good deeds. So this is one group of scholars say that it's literally like your lifespan is decreased. And the third party says تأثير المعاصي في محق العمر إنما هو بأن حقيقة الحياة هي حياة القلب ولهذا جعل الله سبحانه الكافر ميتا غير حي كما قال تعالى أموات غير أحياء. So a third party says that the effects of the sinfulness is taking away the lifespan is like the true lifespan of a person, because the true lifespan of a person is in the lifespan of the heart in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything else is not considered real life, because he says the ayat, quoting the ayat, أموات غير أحياء, the non-believers are dead, not alive. So true life is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else in your life is not counted for. So that's what they're saying, literally every time you don't do good and every time you fall into evil, you're decreasing your lifespan. So everything from the day you're born until the day you die, according to this group of the scholars, is counted for you in the good deeds that you do. Everything else is a waste of life. So in this sense, increasing in sinfulness is wasting your life. فالحياة في الحقيقة حياة القلب وعمر الإنسان مدة حياته فليس عمره إلا أوقات من حياته بالله عز وجل فتلك ساعات عمره فالبر والتقوى والطاعة تزيد في هذه الأوقات التي هي حقيقة عمره ولا عمر له سواها. So he's saying that basically the life of a person is in the life of the heart, and his righteousness and taqwa and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase in this time. So the more goodness you do with this time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with in your life, the more righteousness you have, the more your life will count for. وبالجملة فالعبد إذا أعرض عن الله واشتغل بالمعاصي ضاعت عليه أيام حياته الحقيقة التي يجد غب إضاعتها يوم يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي. He says, to summarize, that the servant who turns away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gets occupied with sinfulness has lost the days of his life, his true life. And that will be on the Day of Judgment the major regret when he comes and he says, Ya laytani qaddamtu lihayati, I wish that I had put forth for my life. Because every single second that passes that you haven't been obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or doing good deeds, we will regret it on the Day of Judgment. Every single second that we lost, whether it's doing sinfulness or just wasting time, we'll regret it when we go in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll say, Ya laytani qaddamtu lihayati, I wish we put forth more for my life, meaning the good deeds. And subhanAllah, when we think about how short life really is, it's truly a loss. If you think yawman aw ba'da yawm, a day or part of a day, ashiyan aw duhaha, like evening or a morning, that your whole life is going to feel like one evening or one morning or one part of the day. And we couldn't be patient enough to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this short time. How much will we regret on the Day of Judgment when we face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Just to pause, if anybody ponders, why do we sin? Like when we see all these evil effects, to think about it, why do you think we sin, or why do we fall into sin? Following desires is one of the reasons, correct? Yes.
Sometimes we see the
Right, not having the taqwa to realize the bigger picture and just taking the immediate ladda or shahwat. That's true. That's actually one of the worst forms of sinners. We're going to cover that too, subhanAllah. But the scholars, they've put together 5 main reasons that that are causes for sin. So like we're going through Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he's telling us the evil effects of sin. So the way to prevent ourselves, inshallah, from falling into sin or continuing in sin is to take account of ourselves. One way to do that is by pondering upon the evil effects of sins. Like when we see all these punishments and these downside of falling into sin, it'll help us to prevent it. Another way to help prevent us from falling into sin is to ponder upon like why we sin in the first place. So you can analyze where that sin is coming from and try to prevent it or cut it at its root. So the scholars, they've put together basically 5 main reasons why people fall into sin. The first one they say is the weakness of faith or lack of taqwa. So ضعف الإيمان أو ضعف التقوى. When your iman is low and decreased, that's easier for a person to fall into sin. The second one is ignorance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ignorance of His asma' wa sifat, or ignorance of His commands and prohibitions. Al-awamir wa nawahi. When a person is ignorant of Allah's names and attributes, for example, He is as-sami' al-basir. He is the all-hearing, the all-seeing. He hears everything we say. When we forget that, we start saying or using our tongues for things we should not be using it for. Or looking with our eyes at things we should not be seeing, or walking or being in places we shouldn't be, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we forget Allah is watching us. Right? Or ignorant of His commands and His prohibitions. If you don't know something is halal or haram, you may fall into doing the haram and staying away from the wajibat or the obligatory deeds. So ignorance is the second main reason people fall into sin. The third one we discussed before is taking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and forbearance for granted and feeling safe from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment. You know, when people, like the common excuse is, oh, Allah Ghafur Rahim, Husn al-Dhan Billah, and they're doing all types of evil deeds. This is one of the ways that people fall into sin easily, because they're taking for granted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. We went through that whole chapter before, that if you don't do the things that require or earn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, then you're not befitting of it, and you may fall into the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
You said taking Allah's mercy for granted. What was the second part?
Taking His mercy and forbearance, hilm, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and feeling safe from His punishment and makr. And the fourth we also mentioned before is keeping bad company. When you're around people, evil people or bad company or people that don't encourage you with good, it's easier for yourself to fall into sin. The more you surround yourself with people that don't respect Allah Azza wa Jal or follow the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the more you will act like those people, and it's easier for you to fall into sin. If they're all doing it around you, it's easy for you to fall into that same mistake. And number 5, like we mentioned, is the increased following of shahawat or shubuhat. Shubuhat is having doubts in the deen to the point that the shaitan tricks the person to commit major acts of evil because he forgets that he's going to go be taken into account on the Day of Judgment, or he thinks it's just something make-believe. When you have raib or shak in your iman, that's the opposite of yaqeen, and that leads to falling into evilness easily. Or shahawat, the desires, the lower desires, the temptations, following those. So those are the 5 main reasons the scholars say that people fall into sins. And a continuous sin could have more than one reason for it. So if we find ourselves, we see some of these signs in us, that we're being prevented from some of the, for example, beneficial knowledge, or we see that we're feeling anxiety, or we see that we're having problems with our families, or we see that we're having problems with our friends, or we feel like a darkness or a loneliness, then go back and check yourself and see where is it coming from, what sin am I doing. Then you find out how is that sin originating, so you can cut the sin from the root, inshallah. Right? And so these are the reasons that cause a sin. You want to do the opposite of it. If it's weakness of faith that's causing you, like you're not really taking the account of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Yawm al-Qiyamah and facing Him and being judged, then start thinking about what the purpose of life is and where we're going to go and how we're going to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ponder upon that so you can increase your iman, and it becomes more difficult for you to follow into sin, and more easy for you to do the good deeds that please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the evil effects of sins is توالد المعاصي. ومنها أن المعاصي تزرع أمثالها ويولد بعضها بعضا حتى يعز على العبد مفارقتها والخروج منها. So sinfulness leads to other sins, to the point where a servant, he will do a sin and get so used to it that it's hard for him to leave that sin. كما قال بعض السلف إن من عقوبة السيئة سيئة بعدها. From the punishments of the sinfulness is to continue and do more sins. So one of the punishments of falling into sin is to do more sins. It's like an evil circle that will spiral you down into the abyss. May Allah protect us from that. وَإِنَّ مِن ثَوَابِ الْحَسَنَةُ بَعْدَهَا. And from the blessings and barakah of the good deeds is to do more good deeds after it. فالعبد إذا عمل حسنة قالت أخرى إلى جنبها أعملني أيضا فإذا عملها قالت الثالثة كذلك وهلم مجرا فتضاعف الربح وتزايدت الحسنات. So when a person does a hasana, it says that another hasana will call that servant, come here and do me too, do another good deed. And then a third one will come and say, oh, come and help, do me as well. Like this hasanat encourages other hasanat until it increases and increases upon you, and leads to a great success and a great ribh, like how would you translate ribh? Gain, a great gain on the Day of Judgment in dunya and akhirah. And also the sayyat is the opposite. When you start doing sinfulness, the other sins call you to come do them as well, until it gets worse and worse and worse. And we said before how too much sin can lead to the ran ala al-qulub, the sealing of the heart, the rusting of the heart. And that was one of the most serious and deadly effects of sins, when your heart is sealed and then you have no shame among Allah Azza wa Jal to do the sinfulness. You don't have any fear anymore of doing the sinfulness. Your heart becomes sealed and you fall into the kufr. And then we said the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those whose hearts are sealed, they will be prevented from seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. بَلْ رَانَ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. They will have the seal upon their heart from what they used to deny. Right? رَبِّهِمْ مَحْجُوبُونَ. They will be like, have a barrier between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the worst of the punishments. So the more one does the good deeds, it becomes like a habit and easier for you to do the other good deeds. And the more difficult it is for you to leave those good deeds. So for example, like if you're used to praying Qiyam al-Layl, right? You do it every single night. If you miss it just one night, you feel like you're missing out on something, like something is missing, like you feel bad, that you missed something like that. Or if you have a hizb of the Quran that you read, a certain amount of Quran you read every day, and you miss that certain portion of the day, you feel bad because you're used to doing it all the time. Or if you fast a certain day of the week or a certain time of the month, and then you miss it, because your good deeds become a habit for you to the point that you actually love it. And if you miss it for some reason, it's like you're missing something in life, right? And the same thing with the bad deeds. A'udhu billah, may Allah protect us from that. When a person continues to do a bad deeds, it becomes a part of their life and a habit. So if they miss the bad deeds, they miss that. Like the believer and the mu'min and the muttaqeen, they miss the good deeds. The evildoers, they start missing the bad deeds. They become so attached to the bad deeds that they can't part with it. And that's a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So be very careful of what you form as habits. Like one of the poets, he says, فَكَانَتْ دَوَائِي وَهِيَ دَاءُ بِعَيْنِهِ كَمَا يَتَدَاوِي شَارِبُ الْخَمْرِ بِالْخَمَرِ. He says that the sickness was the medicine for me. Basically the sinfulness, he keeps doing more sin and more sin. Like the drunkard tries to seek, a cure for his drunkenness with more wine. That's how the poet is saying, basically drawing an analogy for a person who falls into sin continuously. Like his medicine for sin is more sin until his heart becomes sealed. May Allah protect us from that. ولا يزال العبد يعاني الطاعة ويؤلفها ويحبها ويثيرها حتى يرسل الله سبحانه وتعالى برحمته عليه الملائكة تؤزه إليه أزا وتحرضه عليها وتزعجه من فراشه ومجلسه إليها. So he said that a person or a servant will continue to do the good deeds until he loves them or they become beloved to him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send him an angel, or he will send him angels to encourage him to do these good deeds, to the point that he will even get him up from his bed so he can get up and do extra good deeds. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves when a servant does the good deeds and he becomes beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah, he will send his angels to be a helper for this person. And the opposite is true with the bad deeds. If a person continues to do the bad deeds, ولا يزال يألف بالمعاصي ويحبها ويثيرها حتى يرسل الله عليه شياطين فتؤز إليه أزا, that a person will continue to do the sinfulness and the evilness until he starts loving the evilness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send upon him shayateen, devils from the ins and the jinn, that will encourage him in his sinfulness and he will increase in it. So be very careful. Like a small sin can lead to greater sins. Cut it off at its roots before it's too late. And increase in the good deeds. If you have something good, continue to do it. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. The most beloved deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the ones that are continuous, even if it's little bit. If you have something good that you do between you and Allah Azza wa Jal, continue in doing it. Don't leave it. Don't look down upon any small deed, because it could be that one good deed that saves you from the hellfire. It could be that one good deed that gets you into paradise. Right? And inshallah, build upon it and continue to progress and get better and better. ومنها وهو من أخوفها على العبد أنها تضعف القلب عن إرادته فالتقوى إرادة المعاصي وتضعف إرادة التوبة شيئا فشيئا. And from the most scary or fearful effects of the sins is that it makes the heart weaker in loving good deeds, and it makes it basically like easier for it to do sins. And the irada of khair, or the wanting or desire to do good deeds, becomes less and less, and it becomes harder and harder for a person to do good deeds. So this is one of the Imam is saying, one of the most scary effects of the sinfulness, like having that, losing the love of doing good deeds. And he said from the evil effects of sinfulness is basically when one becomes accustomed to the sinfulness, and he starts loving the sinfulness to the point where he will لا يستقبح من نفسه رؤية الناس له ولا كلام فيه, that he will like the sinfulness so much that his nafs doesn't get upset anymore if people see him doing the sin, or if people talk about him doing the sin. And that's one of the greatest of evils. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, كل أمتي معافى إلا المجاهرين وإن من الإجهار أن يستر الله على العبد ثم يصبح فيفتح نفسه ويقول يا فلان عملت يوم كذا وكذا 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 فتهلك نفسه وقد بات يستره ربه. So the Prophet ﷺ said that all of my ummah are forgiven or covered except the ones who brag about their sinfulness. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covered his sinfulness, and then he goes and exposes himself. He tells, oh, hey, such and such, look what I did yesterday, bragging about the sin. And this is one of the signs that his heart is sealed, because he's lost all shame from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and even shame in front of the people. He doesn't care about doing the sinfulness in front of the other people, and he brags about it. And this subhanAllah has become in our times a sign of what you see around us every day on the TV. People bragging about sinning against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and taking pleasure in it. In school, when you go to college or in other professional capacities, you hear people that don't have faith or not practicing Islam as they should be practicing. They talk about the evil that they've done as if they're bragging about it and have no shame in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the people. And this is a major punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah to protect us. I think the iqamah is now, inshallah. So I'll come back after salah if anybody has any questions or if you want to continue. سبحانك الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا.